Okay, Sharif, Long Fallen Dynasty. It's coming to Game Pass very soon, and it is Team Ninja's Souls-like game set in the Three Kingdoms continuity universe.
The continuity
Well, based on those ancient Chinese stories.
Yeah.
The same source material as Dynasty Warriors, but a vastly different take on it. Now, I'm really interested because as soon as I hear Three Kingdoms and obviously Team Ninja are, they're an incredible studio, so like I know this is going to be good, right? And it does cross over with a lot of my interests, but I'm just one of these people. As soon as I hear the word Souls-like, I just shrivel into a ball and roll away from the conversation because I know instantly that it's like, well, this is going to be bleak and I'm going to be shite at it. So is there anything in Wolong for someone like me, from your perspective?
Well, Jim, it seems like you are the intended target audience for this game. No. How much did you play of Elden Ring, or how far into it?
I've nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely not. I've been convinced that I should try it, but I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I definitely think you should try it. I just wanted to see if some of the references I'll be making will make sense to you or not.
Okay.
I think this is, and I call this on my preview, I think this is the most accessible Souls-like on that level of budget and production for a variety of reasons. It starts with the AI companions. The preview build that I had access to, maybe 5-ish hours of gameplay.
Yeah,
you're almost entirely accompanied by an AI companion. It's like you're never really alone, and so you can immediately see how that's going to make combat feel different. They can pull aggro, they can maybe tank more hits for you, and that includes the boss fights as well, which I found really interesting. It is so much like a lot of the elements around the game, and I'll get into it, seem to be designed in a way to not make it easier necessarily, because this is not an easy game. I don't want to fool anyone, but to at least make you stick with it for a while. Because being on Game Pass, they're anticipating, I imagine, a bunch of new players downloading and be like, "Hey, what is this?" People like you interested in the Three Kingdoms. People think the art looks cool, like the saw trailer maybe on the store, and they're like, check it out. It's download whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a bunch of different elements in design that offer you options in a similar way to Elden Ring, although kind of in a different wrapper, because this is not an open world game. That really, if you want to stick with it, the game is like, here's this thing, here's that thing that will help you along.
So you've got an AI companion that's with you at all times. Do you have any control over what they do or how they behave?
No, you don't have control over how they behave, but you have an option to recruit a few of them as you run into them. They're all historical figures. Some of them, I'm not very familiar with the Three Kingdoms, but some of the names I recognize as being in the Dynasty Warriors games, and obviously in the Three Kingdoms with the twist of fantasy. But yeah, you basically make allies as you go. And so you met this person now, and in a sort of a shrine or a bonfire, if you want to call it that, you go in and be like, hey, recruit followers and recruit this person or that person. And you'll see they have sort of different styles in their combat. So one is very agile with a saber thing, so it lets you tank. One is a tank that lets you be the faster, agile thing. And so you can kind of pair them as you want, as you really like. But initially, you're limited by, you just met this person, so they're with you for this half of the level, and then we're going to peace out, and then you're going to be with this other person, and then, you know what I mean? But over time, hey, when they leave, they're like, hey, you can recruit this person from the menu next time you want to play with them. But yeah, you don't have control. It's not like a tactics game.
Okay. In terms of just the minute-to-minute gameplay with an AI companion, and not in terms of how you get them, because obviously that's different, but is it similar to the pawn system in Dragon's Dogma? Just reminded of that when you're talking about it.
Yes and no. Well, the pawns in Dragon's Dogma, you still do some attacks and ask them to heal you and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
This is they're autonomous, and you're traditionally not going to have as many of them. The most I have seen were 2 companions with me. Right. It's not going to be 3 or 4 that were in Dragon's Dogma. But no, it's a simpler. Think of it as having an AI, a co-op partner in a Souls game or an Elden Ring or even in Neo, but they're very kind of passive. Like they're not, you're not talking to them, or like having someone over who's like half paying attention and doesn't have voice chat on, and you can't tell them let's go here, but they see you, so they're following you, and they're pulling their weight. Like they're not gonna keep dying, but you're not necessarily communicating with them in the same way that you would be communicating with a friend who's co-op and planning your attack and doing this. They're not going to blow your cover. They're smart enough to be like, okay, like the AI ignores them if you're trying to be stealthy, which is another thing that we can talk about as being a tool for new players. But they're very sort of like a more advanced version of the spirit summons from Elden Ring, which is basically to help me with this, except they're available more frequently and in a greater part of the campaign than Elden Ring.
Okay, and so aside from people like me who are hopeless, you're a person who, like, you love Elden Ring. It was your game of the year last year. You're into games of this type.
Yeah.
You love a Soulslike. What does this have to offer for you? Are you excited about trying the full version when it hits?
Yes, absolutely. I've played the beta they ran last year, and one of the things that I love about Team Ninja's games is how much they improve from demo to demo or from test to test.
Yeah.
Like the simple things like the UI for the leveling up system was a little bit more confusing in that build, because it was just a sphere and you didn't know how to. So you had to move like the stick and then move it again up and down to go invest point, and it was weird. They have adjusted that, so it's now more of like a table that makes more sense. And they left the sphere to represent the different elements, because effectively your stats are represented by the different elements. So it's like, oh, what would be called strength is called here water. What would be called stamina is called this thing. So that's fun. But yeah, I am interested in this game for a variety of reasons. But my two main things that I'm really, really happy to see improved in this build and continuing to be built on, because there's some new content in this, is the combat. The combat is a mix of Sekiro and Nioh. It is not as complex as Nioh. You don't have 4 stances or 3 stances to worry about and have different skill trees associated with every stance and knowing when to use every stance and do all that stuff. There's just
Thank God for that, because that's
just the one stance. So that's another element of like scaling it back a little bit for newer players.
Yeah.
You don't have a stamina really at all, so you can just keep mashing. But the central mechanic around this, which is why I think it's a little bit of Sekiro and a little bit of Nioh, is that you have your spirit gauge down at the bottom. And that spirit gauge is effectively their representation of a tug of war in a fight. So you don't have stamina, but if you keep getting hit or if you keep blocking, the negative part of that spirit gauge is going to be full up, and eventually you're going to break, effectively as a posture break. And if that happens, they're going to get a critical hit on you and you're going to lose a ton of damage. The same way for them. If you keep deflecting their attack and keep hitting them and they can't hit you, eventually they're going to break. So there's not stamina, it's more of like the tug of war. And the more that you get it into the positive, the more that you can use martial arts, the more you can use magic, and the more that you get into the negative, the more that you want to avoid getting hit again so that you don't get broken. So it's this tug of war that makes the gameplay, especially the one-on-one, so exhilarating, because you're constantly like trying to be on the edge. Like, can I push him? Can I break them before they can break me? And the deflection is so smooth, especially in this build, that you can just simply block and deflect when you think you can do it. So it's easier to even, a game like Sekiro, the difference between blocking and deflecting was massive. So if you just went through that game blocking, I don't think you would finish Sekiro or like get any far into it at all. Whereas this game, you can hold block and see an attack that you can deflect it. This is like slow enough that I can read and I can deflect it and get like effectively a free boost to that spirit gauge, because deflection is a thing. It's like, well, thank you for deflecting that. Here's some boost, use some magic. Or you can just keep blocking it and be like, I'm just blocking it, or dodge it. Like the defensive options that you have flow so well together that if you wanted to be like me, hopefully you're seeing some of the footage was like, this is slow enough I can deflect it and go an entire fight deflecting. Or if you want to be like, I don't know how to read this, I'm just going to block or dodge it. I don't need to. But the game is like working with you to be like, okay, you want to deflect? Here's some cool animation for deflection. Here's some build up that you can use to use your cool abilities. You want to dodge and just treat it as a normal, like a Bloodborne or like a block even? Sure, we can do that as well. Like that's fine. That's the really the major thing with the combat. It's such a unique take on like a bunch of different things that we've seen before.
Yeah.
The other thing is the level design in this game, and I'm sure you've seen in some of the footage. It is much more vertical, so many more layers.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. There's a lot of rooftop stuff.
A lot of rooftop stuff, exactly. And I even it took me a while to be like looking around and be like, is this scaffolding going to take me up? And then there's like a hole in the wall, a hole in the floor that I can go down, and this is the only way I can access it. And then I'm going to wrap back around and do this shortcut. In Neo, usually the extended verticality was like, there's a dude on top of this rooftop throwing fire pots at me.
Yeah.
And there's going to be probably one way to get to them. And when that happens, that's the extent of the verticality in the game. Like there's nothing, everything is a flat surface in that game. Where this game is like, oh my God, like some of the levels are just, the designers are basically being let free. And I love that because I want to explore and I want to tinker and like find different approaches. But also that level design also becomes another element in how that game is more accessible, because the more opportunities you have to sort of survey the situation, the more opportunities for stealth you have, where it's like, okay, I know what to do here. You're not so much going through the funnel of Neo, where it's like, I don't know someone behind this corner. Yeah, sure, there are traps, there are ambushes. That's this game. But you're more like aware of your surroundings in that area, so you're less likely to be surprised when you play it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I really like that idea of the gauge, the combat having, you've got your kind of second to second block hit parry, but you've also got that meta game of like you say, the tug of war of getting the gauge to be on your side as well.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And when does it's day one Game Pass, isn't it?
It is day one Game Pass on PC and Xbox.
When is it hitting?
It is on March 3rd.
March the 3rd, so that's not a lot of time. I quite like what you're saying as well about how like every time you've seen this, there have been tangible kind of incremental improvements to the UI and to how certain things are labeled, how things work. Because like we, in this job, we see a lot of games in an early state and various different stages of readiness before they eventually come out. Yeah. And I swear, a lot of the time they tell you, well, we've changed a lot of things in this build. It's a lot more polished, and they put it on, and you're like, this is exactly the same as it was before.
Yeah.
Like, you're never making a release date.
If they ever, I feel like Team Ninja usually does two pre-release demos, at least.
Yeah.
So if they do another one before March, I feel like anyone who played the original game will immediately notice the difference. Like my one feedback about they send out surveys after every one of those. And my one feedback for that is like, what do you want to change about the code? Like the parry timing is too tight. I can't land a parry to save my life. And then in this, they're like, we listen. The parry timing is more forgiving. It's not, you're not going to parry everything, but it is, when you think you can parry it, it can be parried, which is all I wanted. And then they went and did a bunch of other stuff to the UI that makes it much more readable. A lot of stuff to the healing animation is faster. It used to take so long in that version of the game. But yeah, I'm super happy with the progress they've made.
Yeah. Sounds like it's going to be a good one. Yeah. I might actually play it. I might actually give it a go. There'll probably at some point be a lot of footage on this channel of me failing very badly at it. But
hey, just download it. If you have Game Pass, just give it a go. And I feel like a lot of people.
No excuse, right?
Yeah. If you're at least interested, obviously you're not going to. If you're not interested, you're not interested. Like, but if you are curious and you're like, oh, maybe I don't want to spend full price on Elden Ring just to end up playing it for an hour and be like, I don't like this. Just give this a go. Be like, hey man, and there's obviously co-op in it as well. I don't know if I mentioned that. So if you have another person on Game Pass or bought the game, I don't believe they have crossplay. They didn't say, but even on the pool of Game Pass PC or Xbox, like that's a massive number of players.
Probably the lion's share of the audience in the first few weeks, I'd imagine as well.
So it's one of the most accessible mechanically and as far as like how you get it. And I feel like people should definitely give it a go.
Yeah, so it's just ultra accessible in every possible sense.
好，既然如此，那就来一较高下，看看谁讨伐的黄金更多。
I've been Jim Trinker for VG247, and you should definitely like and subscribe, because if you don't, you smell. Check out the website, check out the podcast, check it all out. Check it out like it's Supermarket Sweet, man. I'll speak to you later.